After 7, so. Okay. Good evening, friends, and welcome to the National Headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America. My name is Paula Finnegan, and I thank you for being with us this evening for this evening's lecture, 4 Essential Steps for a Spiritual Life with Barbara Hebert. As we get started here, could you please turn off any electronic devices that make noise? For those of you who are new to the organization, although I see many familiar faces here, the Theosophical Society has a vision of wholeness that inspires a fellowship united in study, meditation, and service. And it encourages open-minded inquiry into world religions, philosophy, science, and the arts in order to understand the wisdom of the ages, respect the unity of all life, and help people explore spiritual self-transformation. To that end, we offer a variety of lectures, classes, retreats, and workshops, including monthly sound meditations. Please pick up a brochure or a flyer and check out our website for updates, changes, and our extensive schedule of online webinars and classes. The Society is a membership organization, and you're welcome to join. There's information downstairs in the lobby, and there are many benefits to becoming a member, including library borrowing privileges. You'll also receive the Quest magazine quarterly, along with discounts for classes and workshops, and at the bookshop. So enough of that, and I'd like to introduce our speaker. I think in the brochure, the program brochure, it gives her a middle initial, and so I had asked Barbara if there's something she wanted me to share or not share when I introduced her this evening. So Barbara B. Hebert had a day job as director of the University Counseling Center at Southeastern Louisiana University, and is a licensed professional counselor before she was elected president of the Theosophical Society in America. Now, the B stands for Bradley. It's not a secret, which is her maiden name. Her parents didn't wish she was a boy. Barbara's a third-generation theosophist and has been involved in local, regional, and national offices throughout her years of membership. Please welcome Barbara B. Hebert.
Thank you, Paula. My parents may have wished I was a boy because I am the oldest of 6 girls. And I always said that if I had been a boy, I would have been an only child. Thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate you being here. It's so gorgeous outside that it's a real sacrifice to be inside on this gorgeous evening. And thanks to those of you who are tuning in. I think my family is tuning in. The last time I spoke, I forgot to turn off my phone, which went off several times during the program, because my family was group texting. And so, do you see her? She's talking about us again. So I will talk about them tonight because it's one of the few times I can get back at them and they can't get to me. As Paula mentioned, in the Theosophical Society, members are encouraged to study and to, I think, determine what feels right for them. There is a body of information, a group of tenets that many theosophists adhere to, but not everyone, and no one is required to adhere to those tenets. In other words, there is no dogma within the Theosophical Society. That being said, I love this quote. Theosophy is a life to be lived, not merely a system to be learned. So there is a system, there is information that we can learn, but if we don't put it into practical application, it really doesn't do any good at all. It's just words in a book. Words in a book. So living a spiritual life, from my perspective, facilitates the transformation of consciousness, our own consciousness, and ultimately transforms the consciousness of all humanity. And when the consciousness of humanity is transformed, the world is changed. And I don't know about you, but I'm kind of ready for some changes in this world. I'd like to see a little bit more peace and unity and kinship with one another. So a quick story for you. As you may have read in the program brochure, this talk is based on the book, At the Feet of the Master. This is my copy of At the Feet of the Master. It's clearly quite an old copy. It belonged to my grandmother, and there's an inscription on the inside from her. But the story's not about my grandmother, it's about my granddaughter. My granddaughter, and yes, I'm talking about you, I love her dearly. She, when I lived at home, she would spend the night with me about once a week. And on my bedside table is my copy of At the Feet of the Master. And so when she was about 3 years old, she says to me, "May, is that your Bible?" She's being raised in a very traditional Christian household, and they read their Bibles. And it kind of took me back. And I looked at it, and I said, "Well, kind of." But that's all she needed to know. To her, this looked like a sacred text. A sacred text. And while I wouldn't necessarily call it a sacred text, it is a book that has a great deal of information in it that I think is of value to all of us. A little bit of background about the book. It was written in 1909, 1910 by Krishnamurti. He was a young teenager at that point, 14, 15. It's an inspirational book. I think that many people pick it up to read when they first start thinking about spiritual topics. And it's also a book that many people read after they've studied for many, many years, because it's an inspirational book that can be read on a variety of different levels. Every time I pick it up, I find something else, or it makes me think about something just a little bit differently. And that's what I really enjoy about it. But when we read it, I think, at least from my perspective, it's very important to read it with an awareness of the changes in our world since 1910. This is what Manhattan, Lower East Side of Manhattan, that's the right language. You could tell I'm not a New Yorker. That's what it looked like in 1910. And this is what it looks like today. So clearly, there have been many, many changes in that 100+ years. And so if you choose to read the book or to look at it, and certainly when I talk about it tonight, I'm going to take what my perception is, the basic concepts of the book, and share that in what I think is more modern language. Doesn't change the value of the book, but I think for me it changes at least the language. So the qualifications are steps. And I hate to tell you that it doesn't say the only 4 steps to living a spiritual life. It just says 4 steps that are essential. This is part of walking that path, walking that spiritual path. In the book, you'll see that the words in bold, those are the words that are used in the book. But I've changed those words because they don't mean the same thing today as they meant 100+ years ago. So we're going to be talking about discernment. We're going to be talking about indifference to the result of our actions or lack of attachment, altruistic living, and love. Not personal love necessarily, although that's part of it, but a love that encompasses all of humanity. And these are some of the steps that are essential, I think, in living a spiritual life. So the first one, discernment. Discernment, as you already know, means distinguishing between things. Okay, we discern between things. And one of the things that we need to discern between as we walk the spiritual path is what is real and what is unreal. If I was on a boat, that would look very real to me. But that's not all there is. And a lot of times I think in living life, we see what's in front of us and we assume that's all there is. But reality, with a capital R, is much bigger, much larger, much deeper, much broader. There just aren't the words to describe. And so discerning between what is real and maybe what's not real. What's not real. What may seem to be. The thing that reminds me of this the most is when I think back to high school. I don't think my high school experience was too much different than most people's. When I was in high school, the only thing that was important to me, the real, was school. My friends, boys, football games. That was real. Stuff at home, my mother, my sisters, chores, whatever, that wasn't very real. It wasn't very important. I just had to go there at the end of the day. And then I got to go back to school. Notice I've never said anything about going to school for the academics. I went for the things that were real to me at that point. And that's a little bit, it kind of reminds me of this. At that point, school was real. And I never realized how much more there was to life. So one of the things that we're called upon to do is to discern what is real, what is not real. This world that we're living in, according to many spiritual philosophies, this world is not real. It is, because we have to eat, we have to wear clothes when it's warm, when it's cold. We have to wear our coats when it's cold. It feels real, but that's not all there is. There's a great deal more, a great deal more. So the reality is everything, not just a small piece of it. We're also called upon to think about the difference between right and wrong. I think most of us do this, hopefully. We stop and we think about it. We make decisions so many times a day. We stop and think about it. You know, we make a decision to go up the steps, or maybe I should go to the ladies' room on the first floor, or maybe I should go to the ladies' room on the third. But whatever, they're decisions. We make decisions all the time. And we have to discern right from wrong, which I think most of us do. It can also become a little bit more difficult. What about discerning what's important from what's not important? Okay. I was a high school English teacher, hence the English teacher glasses. I was a high school English teacher for a number of years, and one of my colleagues, one day we were talking, and he said to me that he had given his youngest son permission to drop out of high school. I was horrified. Like, what? You did what? Because education is important to teachers. It's important to all of us, but teachers especially, you know, they hang on to it. And he said, Barbara, I had to make a decision. He said, we were fighting constantly about school. And I had to make a decision between what was most important. My son and the relationship with him that I would have for the rest of my life, or 2 years of school, that I knew he was smart enough to get his GED, his equivalency diploma, and go into college. I had to make that decision. And again, this is one of those examples. What is most important? Most important. We sometimes talk about, or we need to talk about the discernment between what's useful and what's useless, or, more difficult, what's useful and what's not quite as useful. We had a meeting this afternoon about a program. Is this a useful way to use our resources? Or is there a more useful way to use our resources? Constantly thinking about the decisions that we make. True versus false. I'm really not going to touch that one. Selfish versus unselfish. A friend of mine, her husband was diagnosed with colon cancer, I believe, has had a number of surgeries, lots of issues that have come with it. And she texted me. I texted her the other day just to check on her, and she texted me back and she said, "I'm being very selfish." And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to go out to dinner with a friend tonight." I wrote her back. I said, "That's not selfish. That's called self-care." There's a big difference. On the airplane, the flight attendants say, "Put on your own oxygen mask before you put on someone else's." Because when we fall apart, if we don't take care of ourselves, then we're not there to help other people. That's not selfish, that's self-care. But it can become a very fine line, can it? Between selfish and self-care. Selfish and selfless. I wish I had the answer to say, if you do this, this, and this, then you're being selfless, and if you do this, this, and this, you're being selfish. It's really not that simple, is it? It's more about the motive behind the action. I have the picture of the bracelet up there. Probably many of you recognize that from a few years ago when people were wearing it. Stands for what would Jesus do? So if we have a decision to make, if they had a decision to make, they'd look at their bracelet. What would Jesus do in this? Doesn't have to necessarily be Jesus. It can be any spiritual teacher. But to lay those decisions, those questions against what we think someone, a teacher, a spiritual teacher, what decision that person would make might help us in that direction. Indifference to this is step 2. Step 1 was so easy, wasn't it? We just discern all that and then we're good and, move on to step 2. Indifference to the results of our actions, lack of attachment. In Sanskrit, it's called vairagya. I just said that so you'd think I was smart. I had to practice saying it. His Holiness the Dalai Lama wrote, "According to Buddhist psychology, most of our troubles stem from attachment to things that we mistakenly see as permanent. Or real, the top of that iceberg. We're attached to the top of that iceberg when there's so much more. We're locked in. We've got locks and locks and locks on us, don't we? All of us. All of us. You can see why step 1 was discernment. Because in order to understand what's permanent as opposed to what's impermanent, we have to have discernment, don't we? Okay, so this picture. I couldn't not put this picture in this PowerPoint, okay? I saw it and I thought, wow, look at that picture. And then I thought, how is that guy leaning out an airplane with his hair in perfect, with no... And then I realized, duh, Barbara, it's photoshopped. Okay, so I'm a little slow with technology, but he kind of stands out for us. Indifference to the results of our actions. Clearly, if this was real, he would be indifferent to the results of his actions. But we have expectations for ourselves, don't we? I should be meditating every day. I should be able to sit and meditate for 30 minutes at a time without having other thoughts disrupt me. I should be spiritual. I should be kind always. You get the idea, right? I don't know anybody who actually is able to do that. In fact, I say get rid of the shoulds, totally. We also have expectations for others. This is not my kids, but give my kids a present. Do I have an expectation of a thank you? If I do something nice for someone, do I have an expectation that they're going to be nice back to me? I think a lot of times we do, unconsciously or consciously. Again, indifference to the results of our actions. When we do things because, hopefully, that's what we want to do. That's what we believe needs to be done, not because we're expecting some type of a result. What about notice me? Oh, that's him. That's notice me. A lot of times, and you guys know people like this, they do things so that people will notice them. They can't be quiet because they want people to look at them and hear how smart they are or whatever that is. Okay? We all know people like this. Sometimes this might even be us. Okay? Their actions, their language, whatever that is. It's all about the results of our actions. We're attached. And really, I think most of us need to see the results of our actions, don't we? It's really hard to live in a place, in an area, in a space, that's probably a better word, to live in a space where we may never know what the results of our actions are. If I go pick up trash alongside the highway, that's my action, I may never know what impact that has on other people, if any. For years, I taught graduate students who were learning to be counselors. That's one of the most difficult things that they encountered, was to realize that no matter what happened in the counseling relationship, no matter what happened with their client, they made progress, didn't make progress, went backwards, whatever, it's not about the result. It's not about the result. We have to trust in the process. Trust that there is a plan, whatever we believe that plan to be. And different traditions believe that plan to be whatever. But to trust in that process and to be okay with doing what needs to occur and allowing. Make sure I said all this. Yes. So lack of attachment. Desirelessness is the word that's used in the book originally. And a lot of people have interpreted that as have no desire, get rid of feelings, just, be whatever you are without feelings, maybe a robot, I don't know. My perspective is no. We don't want to get rid of our feelings. We have feelings for a reason. We are, as Teilhard de Chardin said, I apologize if I said that wrong, pronounced his name wrong, incorrectly. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We have feelings for a reason. And we need to feel those feelings. We need to express those feelings within reason. It's not the feelings that we need to get rid of. The goal is to pay attention to how our feelings impact us and impact others. People will frequently say, oh, it's bad to be angry. You should never get angry. I think anger is pretty valuable sometimes. Anger is an emotion, a secondary emotion. When we feel frightened or vulnerable or anything that makes us want to curl up in the fetal position under the bed or in the closet, okay? What we do as human beings is we take anger and we plop it on top, because anger allows us to get up and say, oh yeah? You can't take advantage of me or whatever. It's self-protection. It's what we do with the anger that becomes problematic. It's not the anger itself. We don't want to get rid of our feelings. We just want to pay attention to the impact of it on ourselves and others. I love this quote. And let's see, Brennan Manning wrote it. To ignore, repress, or dismiss our feelings is to fail to listen to the stirrings of the spirit within our emotional life. We have feelings for a reason, and our goal is not to get rid of them. On the spiritual path, I have known people who experienced, or in this spiritual world, community. I have met people who, on the death, let me be more specific because I think I'm talking in circles. I have known people who said to someone who is grieving the death of a loved one, yeah, I know you're sad, but it's okay because, you know, you'll be reunited with him after death. Or it's okay, you'll be born again together one day. Really? I mean, who cares? I mean, maybe one day we'll care. But at that moment, in that grief, that is the coldest, meanest thing I've ever heard anybody say. It's totally negating and dismissing those feelings, which are very valid and very important. Very important. So as people who walk the spiritual path, being aware of how we express our feelings, how we allow others to express their feelings, is so important. Put that up there because of anger. Anger's the one, you know, because we're told, this is not, of course, in my script, so I'm off script, but that's okay. We're told not to feel angry, so what happens as human beings, we take that anger and we shove it down. We don't just get rid of it, we just shove it down and ignore it. And eventually, it's going to explode. Like this, like Mount Kilauea in Hawaii. It's going to explode. And almost always, from my experience, it's going to explode at the worst possible time in the worst possible location. It just comes out. Step 3. Isn't this good? We're just going through these steps so quickly. We are going to be walking the spiritual path, living an altruistic life. Altruism is the selfless concern for the well-being of others. And again, I love this quote. The time for service, serving others, is every moment of the day. For though there may not always be occasion for a kindly action, there is always occasion for a kindly attitude. When we look at the reason we're here on this earth, on this planet, in these lives, living these lives, you know, we may come up with many answers, and that answer may change over the course of a lifetime as we continue to study and as our understanding continues to deepen. I think for me, at least at this point in my life, I believe that I am here to learn, to grow, in order to serve humanity as a whole. It's a big thing. It's a big commitment, a big step. But there are lots of ways to do it. It doesn't mean that I have to go out and fix everything, because we know that's not happening. If I could do that, I would, and so would you, wouldn't you? Just snap my fingers, wave my magic wand. Service to others, service to humanity. We can serve individuals, and when we serve individuals, we're serving humanity as a whole. Because if we go back to one of the basic tenets of the Theosophical Society, we're all one. We look separate, we look individual, but we are all one. So when I serve one person, I'm serving all of humanity. Now, how do we do that? We do it with our thoughts, We do it with our words. We do it with our actions. Always. Or at least we try for always. Might not always do it, but we try for always. So some thoughts about altruistic living. These are pictures of thought forms from the book Thought Forms by Annie Besant and C.W. Leadbeater. This is their perspective or their perception of how helpful thoughts look. And this is their perception of how explosive anger looks. I don't know. I've never seen those. But I like the pictures. So our thoughts. Never ceases to amaze me how many people think that we are our thoughts. We are our minds. We are our brains. And that's all. That's not true. We're so much more than that. Again, back to that discernment of the real versus the unreal. Okay. We're not that. We're much, much more. But we can use this mind, this brain, to help others. Okay. Thoughts are things. Thought forms. Thoughts are things. And I think you know this. Your own experience has probably taught you this. You've probably known someone who is, for want of a better word, we'll call Debbie Downer. Okay? Probably all know a Debbie Downer. And when you are in that person's presence, you just feel like, oh, please, everything's so dreadful. I mean, it's just like attacking you. And the same is true, okay, when you're with a Pollyanna, okay, somebody who always sees the light. The glass is always half full, okay, always positive, always cheerful, or almost always, okay. You can feel that. That's your experience. Have you ever walked in a place and thought, oh, I don't think I want to go in this place. This place is not comfortable. Thoughts. Or you walk in another place, hopefully that's what you feel when you walk in here and think, oh, this is a good place. This is a peaceful place. Thoughts are things, and they impact us, and they impact those around us. When in a previous place of employment, when I left, they hired someone that I didn't like. I didn't have a choice. I left. They didn't say, here, Barbie, you pick your replacement. They hired somebody that I was not thrilled with the changes that were made. Okay? I didn't agree with them, and I was really upset because I was feeling attached. I think that was step 2. Anyway, I was feeling attached, and so I was feeling angry. And I just kept feeling this anger, and it kept kind of bubbling up. And finally, it occurred to me, I'm a little slow, but it occurred to me, Barbara, what are you doing? You are sending this person who's in charge of this place that you love, you're sending him negative thoughts all the time. How is that helping anything? How is that helping anything? Certainly wasn't helping me because I was just caught up in, this rat race. But I believe it wasn't helping that person either, because I know that our thoughts impact us as well as others. Our actions follow our thoughts, don't they? When we focus on thoughts of service to others, it brings action that helps others. A lot of times when someone is struggling with depression or anxiety, they're encouraged to get out in nature, to go and do exercise, to go and serve someone else, to help someone else. Because when we're helping others, we're no longer thinking about ourselves. We're in that mode of service. Now, there is a boundary between helping and enabling. And I can't talk about this without talking about that boundary. And my best example of that is once again with my children, but this is from when they were little, so they probably aren't attached to it. So you probably at least can imagine this if you've not experienced it. You have a 4-year-old who wants to make their own cereal. So they pour the cereal in the bowl. It's okay. And then they head for the refrigerator. And they grab that full gallon of milk. Okay. And they're headed back to put milk on their cereal. Now, you know what a 4-year-old does with a full gallon of milk, right? Okay. So, as a mom who does not want to clean up the table, the floor, the kid, the dog, whoever else, I'm like, don't do that. You're going to make a mess. You're going to spill it. What a terrible message for my kid, right? You're incapable. Okay. But if I take it from them, and I'm always pouring the milk on the cereal, how's my kid ever going to learn how to do that? I mean, eventually they do. I haven't yet met a 20-year-old. That's not true. But you get the drift. We want to help, but there is a boundary between helping and enabling. Enabling is when they never figure out how to pour the milk on their cereal. So saying, here, let's do that together, and helping to pour. Okay, so some spills on the floor. Let's clean it up. Things spill sometimes. That's okay, because we're teaching. We're not enabling, and there's a clear boundary between the two. Does that make sense? Focusing on our own work while we're helping others. I haven't met anyone yet that doesn't have their own work, internal work to do, psychologically, spiritually, whatever that is. And so while we're helping others, that's actually helping us do our own work. So, more thoughts about altruistic living. Mutual respect for all traditions and cultures. To me, that comes back to the objects of the Theosophical Society. The unity of all life, the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science, and spiritual self-exploration. Not having respect for other traditions doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't mean I have to agree with that person. That was one of the most difficult things that I had to learn as a parent and also as a teacher. Just because I don't agree with someone else's point of view doesn't mean that I can't respect their point of view. They have every right to have it. Now, when someone's point of view becomes an action that's harmful to others, I may have a problem with actions. But in terms of traditions and cultures, respecting people's rights to that, to me, that's why we're here. Acceptance in the face of obstacles. I think it's probably fair to say that there's no one here in this audience, at home, or anywhere in the world who has not had an obstacle or two in their lifetime. It's just part of the human experience, isn't it? None of us get out of here without some obstacles. They're opportunities for growth. Okay, do the air quotes. I'm not always appreciative of those opportunities, and I have had a few, to say the least. Okay. But think about it in your own life. When have you grown the most? When have you learned the most about yourself and others? Expanded your awareness? Probably when you hit one of those obstacles, and especially when you made it over. So while I personally don't appreciate the obstacles when I'm cracking my head against them, I do appreciate the growth and the opportunity for the growth once I've grown. I'll wait until I get to the other side. But knowing that that's what's most likely coming, especially when we're working to overcome the obstacles, and to accept. Part of living altruistically. And one more. One-pointedness. Focusing, mindfulness, those are pretty common words today. Living in the moment. But it makes a great deal of sense, doesn't it? When we live in the moment, when we're focused on something and we're truly living in the moment, we're not focusing on the past, we're not focusing on the future, we are living in the moment. And especially if that moment is service to others. How beautiful is that? When we think about the past, sometimes we may have regret. Sometimes we may have longing and wish we could go back there. Sometimes when we look toward the future, we have feelings maybe of anxiety. Is it going to be the way I want it to be? When we're here, and it's so much easier to say than to do, when we stay in this present moment, we are truly walking the spiritual path. Trust and confidence. Trust and confidence. Trust the process. We all believe there is one, probably. That's why we're here. Okay. Not telling you what it is. I know what I think it is. I don't know if that's what it really is. But trusting it. And trusting ourselves. Because if we're really focusing on working on ourselves, discerning right from wrong, important from unimportant, then we're able to trust ourselves in our decisions. Somebody told me one time that the only mistake that we can make is not learning from our choices. So I've made plenty of opportunities to learn from my choices in my life. And I'm sure we all have. Learning. This is supposed to be a video, but I don't think I can make it go. That's okay. That tells you to trust in the process because it's watching the flowers bloom. But here in Northern Illinois, we've had that opportunity the last few weeks and just watching them come up. Trusting. I don't know about y'all, but a month and a half ago, I didn't think it was ever going to happen. I had given up, okay? And watching it now is just so incredible. So next year, I'll try better to trust in that process. Try harder. Love. This is a quote from the book. Of all the qualifications, the steps, love is the most important. For if it is strong enough in us, it forces us to acquire all the rest. And all the rest without it would never be sufficient. It's the we over me. We're not talking about just personal love here, okay? Although that's part of it. Love is love is love. But we're talking about a depth of love for all of humanity. When we love humanity, and no matter, we might say when we love God, when we love the divine, when we love Brahma, when we love the absolute. Okay? A little harder when it's not as anthropomorphic. But when we love that, that pushes us forward. It pushes us on the spiritual path. Doesn't it? That's why we're here. That's why you guys are here tonight, all of you. We over me. Love for the all. Ahimsa. No harm to any living thing. There was a bug in my bathroom, and I asked it to go away because I didn't want to harm it. But it was a little creepy, and it was big. And it flew away. It's probably still somewhere in my house. I hope it finds an open door, window, and goes away. But no harm to any living thing because we're all connected. We're all one. And always watching for an opportunity to help. It doesn't have to be huge. Giving the dog water, holding the door open for somebody, smiling at someone as you're going through your day, making eye contact. There are a lot of people who never actually receive eye contact from another human being as they go through their day. Hard to imagine. And I can't imagine how difficult it would be to live that way, to feel invisible. We have the opportunity to make that difference in another human being, for another human being, and ultimately for ourselves, because we're all one. So to put it together, so the 4 steps, right? Oh, it says the 4. It should say just 4. Sorry, because I'm sure there are plenty of others. I just haven't gotten there yet. So 4 essential steps. Discernment, what is real, what is not real. Distinguishing in every decision we make. Lack of attachment. What's real, what's not real? Are we attached to what's real? Are we attached to what's not real? Living altruistically. Loving all beings. These are the things that help us to live a spiritual life, which then hopefully transforms our consciousness and the consciousness of all humanity, which ultimately changes the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you.
If you have some questions, please raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone. Have comments, questions?
Or thoughts or observations. Yeah, I'm not very good at questions because that implies I have answers. I have lots of questions. Okay. Hey, hang on 1 second. You hear my southern accent come out periodically. Hang on. Yes, ma'am.
Basic question. To lead a spiritual life, do you have to have a deity? Do you have to have your Allah? Does it have to be some thing or person that is bigger than you? Or is it?
I personally don't think so, but I think each person has to decide that for themselves because we're all so unique. And so some people may need that or want that, and some may not. Yeah, I wish there was a more definitive answer.
No questions from online?
I answered all of the questions. It's perfect. I know, you guys just want to get out of here and go outside, don't you? I know that. Who's going to get ice cream after this? Yes, I can, huh? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you all very much for being here.
Well, if you think of things afterwards, Barbara will be here. So while we have refreshments, or you can discuss amongst yourselves and maybe talk to Barbara. Thank you, Barbara, and thank all of you for spending a part of your evening with us. I have a lot of upcoming events to mention to you this evening. Some of the things Barbara talked about you can put into practice this Saturday at our Interfaith Prayers for Peace. The TS hosts this twice a year, and it is just what it says, Interfaith Prayers for Peace. And the facilitator for that, Mazar Ahmed, is involved in a number of interfaith activities, and she is a emeritus trustee for the Council of Parliament of World Religions, and she's the founder and organizer of the Interfaith Prayers for Peace. She believes that meaningful dialogue happens over a meal. So after we share our prayers up here, she provides a light lunch for us. And so you can discuss with others how to put your prayers into action, how to live altruistically, So if you want to think about that, join us on Saturday at 11:30. And next Friday, there's a guided gong meditation. So if you want to practice that meditative part of your spiritual life, Marian and Gabriella Kraus will be here next Friday. But next Thursday, we have a talk, Daring to Rest, How Yogic Sleep Can Help You Rise Up, with Karen Brody. She's a mom, entrepreneur, public speaker, and published author. Her most recent book, Daring to Rest, Reclaim Your Power with Yoga Nidra Rest Meditation, will be available for sale. Now, the talk is open to everyone, but she has a workshop for women only. It is May. So sorry, guys. You'll have to read the book. Join Karen for her workshop, Rest to Rise, a day of yoga, nidra sleep meditation for women. And it's from 10:30 till 3:30 on Saturday, May 19th, a week from Saturday. You can experience the life-changing magic of yoga nidra meditation and learning the Daring to Rest method. The day will include intention setting, journaling, and gentle movement. Wear loose clothing and bring your own vegetarian lunch, or you'll go out. And that's all I have to say for now. Thank you all. Please stay for refreshments and continued conversation.
I'll send you the template.